listen to that. Just chills every time. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, but we're diving into The Last of Us Part 2. Now this game, there's not really been too many days where I haven't woken up and thought about this game. Like many people, had a big impact on me, and that little musical motif is actually going to be really important in this video, so hold on to that. We're just going to be focusing on one small part of it today. We're going to be looking at Ellie's flashback at the end of her first day in Seattle and how it uses subtext to explore the themes in both The Last of Us Part 2 and the first game. But just before Ellie's flashback, it is worth considering what just happened to her and Dina, why she might be thinking about this memory now. After journeying through Seattle and enduring numerous near brushes with death, Ellie and Dina take refuge in an abandoned cinema. Ellie tells Dina that she's immune to the spores, and Dina confesses to Ellie that she's pregnant. Ellie is visibly shocked by this and doesn't seem to know how to respond.
I think I'm pregnant. What? Don't worry, it's not yours. What are we supposed to do now? Nothing. I just need to rest for a second. Are you fucking kidding? How long have you known? I was late a few weeks ago. A few weeks? We could have still turned back. I didn't know. I wasn't sure, okay? I didn't want to be a burden. Well, you're a burden now, aren't you?
Ellie backs away from the conversation and decides to check out the rest of the building. In a room backstage, Ellie finds a guitar and strums out the first few notes of a song we've heard before at the beginning of the game. Thinking about those lyrics and what they mean in terms of loss, it kind of sums up the crossroads Ellie is at in this moment, and why this memory she's about to dip into has particular relevance. Dina's revelation offers something Ellie hasn't considered all this time: hope. The idea that there is life after her quest for vengeance, that she can choose a different path. Her visible rejection of this shows her being unable to face that possibility, even if she suspects it might be the right thing to do. But what she's going through now, all the grief and pain, is in response to the loss of hope, that she might live a peaceful, happy life, whereas at the moment all she can think about is revenge and pain. But I think what's crucial to understanding this flashback is that not all the pain and anger is directed at Abby. I think some of it is directed at Joel. And we're going to dive into the memory itself now, and how it reflects this fork in the road she's at. So we get a really nice transition from Ellie playing guitar in the theatre to her practicing the same song with Joel in Wyoming. They then trek down the river together and enjoy some nice moments as we see Ellie showing that she can swim now and Joel teasing her about her imminent birthday surprise. A lot of this sequence is a bit of a flex in how good the graphics are, the water on Ellie's hair as well as later when she poses in front of the mirror. But it's also worth noting how different the colour palette is in this sequence. Seattle has all these quite muted greys, browns and blues, and then before that we were in the really cold winter of Wyoming, so there's just a lot of snow and kind of grey stuff around. But Wyoming in this memory has all these wonderfully warm oranges and yellows. The birthday present is revealed as Joel and Ellie arrive at the Wyoming Museum of Science and History. During this arrival, you can take out Ellie's notebook and look through it for some previous entries. Something I found curious is one illustration of a deer or stag that's been scribbled out. Now obviously this is just a sign of a discarded drawing, but we see it a couple more times when Ellie attempts to draw Joel after his death, and she seems to have trouble drawing the eyes each time, so she scribbles it out. This isn't quite foreshadowing, I think it's more of a reminder, and continues this parallel between humanity and animals we're going to explore more later on. Joel and Ellie wander through the museum, and it's full of nice little character moments like putting hats on some of the dinosaurs, and more sketches and fooling around. I think we need to take a step back though, and go back to my previous setup about where Ellie is, this crossroads moment. We've talked about why Ellie is accessing this memory from a character point of view, in that Ellie is probably thinking about this memory because it's a fond memory of Joel, a happier time, and because of the link in the song she played. And that after Dina's revelation, she is contemplating why she is doing all this and how much further she needs to go. So obviously thinking of a happy memory of Joel reminds her of him and why she started this in the first place. But from a story point of view, there's some symbolism going on in the choice of setting as well. That lines up quite nicely with this crossroads moment Ellie is experiencing. When you think about it, Ellie represents a kind of choice for humanity as well. She is the key for its future survival, but she could also be its extinction as well. Just as Dina's baby and her quest for revenge against Abby represent a choice between hope or extinction, in a fairly loose sense of the term, I'll admit. Ellie herself is representative for this choice as someone who is immune, but the museum also parallels this dilemma. It's divided into two sections, a section on the dinosaurs and a section on space exploration. We can easily derive from this a parallel of extinction versus hope as well. On the one side is what awaits humanity if they aren't able to beat the cordyceps fungus, and the other represents the best of what humanity is capable of, that they can rise to any challenge. And going into a slightly more meta mode, there is an irony in that they are exploring a museum about dinosaurs when they currently inhabit a world that is, if you think about it, full of museums. Take a look at Seattle.
This place is like somebody's memory of a town, and the memory's fading. It's like there was never anything here but jungle.
It's not an actual living city. It's full of artifacts that are now dead or extinct in their own way. So I think this museum reminds the player of how close to extinction and hope humanity is while playing as Ellie. But it also goes deeper. Now, this is fundamentally a happy memory for Ellie as she reminisces, but it takes a turn for worse, like a dream, slowly mutating into a nightmare. After the ending of the previous game, there is a friction to Joel and Ellie's relationship. It's not perfect. She knows he is lying to her about something, but this lie has also taken away from her the very thing that she thought was special about herself.
Hey, wait. Back in Boston? Back when I was bitten? I wasn't alone. My best friend was there. And she got bit too. We didn't know what to do. So, she says, let's just wait it out. You know, we can be all poetic and just lose our minds together. I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
Oh, you don't understand.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And you... No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
Ellie was carrying around this small flame of hope, that she could somehow be the difference in the pain and suffering she saw around her, that she could stop the awful things happening and the world could be renewed. But Joel put out that flame, and now she has to live with it. The whole museum interaction holds up an interesting mirror to the Ellie we meet in The Last of Us Part 2. This vibrant, happy girl is replaced by this quite subdued and reserved woman. And I think Joel's choices are behind this evolution, because when you take hope and meaning from someone's life, what are they left with? And when you, the person who not only took that away from them, but also gave them love and security, making the whole relationship complicated, while acting as a pseudo-father figure also leave, maybe we can start to see that Ellie's anger isn't just at Abby, It's at Joel and herself, and then just as you come close to forgiving that person, the opportunity to reconcile is then ripped away. It's important to remember we experience The Last of Us Part 2 as a story in reverse, with the crucial emotional parts we need to understand the characters only arriving towards the end of the story. We basically view someone's trauma acting out in reverse, and this flashback is crucial to understanding that. Now that we've set out how the setting reinforces the choice Ellie has to make, not only for herself but how it might affect the future of humanity, I want to take a look at 3 key moments that frame the fault line that runs through Joel and Ellie's relationship. You see, it's easy to assume from what we see of Joel and Ellie that they have a good relationship. And I'm not saying it's outright bad, but it's also a far more complex relationship than can be just summed up as good. This is something that I talked about in my previous video on the winter chapter from part 1 of The Last of Us, where I outline how this fracture at the heart of their relationship is set up in the 3rd chapter of the original game. Anyway, so we're already in the mindset of the first game with this whole flashback, but then 2 key things happen subtextually. They're almost so obvious they stop being subtext. The first key moment, we have a kind of mirrored, or rather an echo of previous framing in a scene from part 1. One of the most famous scenes from the game is when Joel and Ellie stumble across a group of wild giraffes and stop to pet them. It's just this wonderfully rendered moment of beauty and peace. Now you could say we're just getting this message of innocence again, but I think now we're seeing it differently. Joel and Ellie approach the skeleton of the Brachiosaurus in much the same way they did the giraffes. Ellie even says,
Looks like a giraffe.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
and it leans over the balcony just like the giraffe did. Except this time when you look at it, there's a quite macabre feeling to it as they stare at this skeleton. Instead of this nice scene with animals roaming free, there is a collection of bones staring back. And also, whereas before the museum has been dappled in sunlight, this part of it is noticeably shadowed, and written on the wall beside it in big letters is the word extinction. The second key moment doesn't really need too much explanation from me. It's just a lovely moment that shows the bond between them and why it's so important to each of them. And this moment is noticeably bathed in sunlight. So I'm just going to let the game tell its own story here as Joel and Ellie explore the shuttle replica.
After you. Watch your head.
What the heck?
Oh! Okay. Wow.
Wow.
As you look at all these buttons.
Oh, it's so badass. Man. Could you imagine just...
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find. Take it. Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
Seconds and counting. Astronauts reported field good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
I do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
kiddo.
Now the third key moment happens when Joel and Ellie get to the other side of the museum, where again, we see a lighting change to create a darker atmosphere. After splitting up to find a way in, Ellie stumbles across ominous messages written on the museum's walls, and the posed animal vignettes suddenly seem a lot creepier when the lights are off. And then we get a noise.
Come on, fucker.
And the combat UI comes up. Immediately we're on edge as we scrounge for ammo and equipment. Eventually the source of the writing on the walls is found. A firefly. The group who believed in being a light in the dark, who wanted to be something people could have hope in.
You can still rise with us. Remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Believe in the fireflies.
Instead, in his suicide note, the ex-Firefly laments his feelings of hopelessness and questions if everything he did, if the parts of himself that he sacrificed, were worth it. And now we see another example of what might await Ellie down one of the paths in this particular crossroads. As we head on into the next section, the last message reads, "There is no light."
Stupid fake animals.
Out of nowhere, a boar comes charging out the darkness and sends Ellie stumbling. It runs off screen, and then Joel is able to get into the museum, finally.
I'm in here!
The hell was it?
It's just some animal.
Well, let's get a move on. I want to get a fire going before it gets too dark. Come on.
Now I told you we would come back to that bit of music. It's the first time you hear that motif from the original game in the entire sequel. I think this whole flashback spells out the conflict of both games and why Ellie is at the place she's at emotionally. As Joel says they need to move on, Ellie looks up and there on the wall is the symbol of the fireflies. Ellie puts her hand to her bite mark, the sign of her immunity. Underneath the symbol on the wall, it reads, "Liars." And that's where the memory ends. Earlier I mentioned the fault line that runs through Joel and Ellie's relationship, and this is it. Ironically, it is Ellie and Joel who are the ones lying to themselves and each other, or trying so hard to convince themselves and each other that they believe the lie. But if we track back a second to the boar that comes charging out the dark, we get another little parallel. Ellie has kind of been mirrored against animals in the previous game, for example the rabbit she kills in the winter chapter, and the same kind of happens here. Ellie's interaction with that boar is like a vision of her future self appearing, a frightened animal. Because that's what The Last of Us 2 does a great job of grinding her down to, a frightened animal scared to confront the trauma and impact of what she's going through and what it all means. A loss of hope. The Last of Us Part 2 takes extensive measures to show how far Ellie is willing to go down a path we don't want our heroes to go down. Even after a showdown with Abby in Seattle, we get an even more brutal showdown in Santa Barbara. And when she returns to Wyoming to find Dina and JJ gone, it seems like there's really no path back for her. That she really did lose herself in the pain, loss, and betrayal she was experiencing. But it's left more open-ended than that. Abby's journey is actually a far more conventional one from a story point of view. I think it's actually closer to Joel's than Ellie's, as she finds closure on a traumatic event and experiences what it's like to hope again. I don't know what Ellie will be like in the next game, if there even is one, but I believe in her. At the end of the flashback, the boar rushes off into the darkness of the museum, but Ellie follows Joel back out into the light.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I've not found try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts I've no need for anymore, 'cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me.